Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Today I'm going to be creating some Halloween wall decor. For my project today, I'm going to be using this wood round. It's approximately 45 centimeters in diameter, and I am going to be using Paint Couture's pitch black chalk paint. I'm going to be applying the pitch black chalk paint over the top of the entire wood round. Here you can see I just adjusted it to change the direction of my brush strokes. I wanted it to go in the same direction as the wood grain. Sometimes you can still see the wood grain beneath paint, so I just wanted to keep this in mind and have the wood going vertically. So I'm going to be painting both the front and back of the wood round. Painting the back helps to reduce any risk of warping, and I'm also going to be doing the edges. I ended up actually doing 2 coats of the pitch black on the side that I'm going to be doing most of my work on today. Also, please excuse my more nasally voice than usual. I'm having quite a few sinus issues, but I really wanted to share this video with you guys. Next, I took out this stencil here. I actually designed this one myself. I will have a link for it in the description below. And I am here just working out where the approximate center is. I'm going to be marking that with a lead pencil as a bit of a guide. Now, my stencil is a bit smaller than the surface I'm working on, so I am going to be showing you how you can stretch and sort of space out the stencil to make it work with a larger surface. I then took out Paint Couture's Simply White chalk paint. I'm going to be using this as a base in the areas where I'm going to be using some lighter colored stencil paste. So this is really just the base, so that I don't have to do as many coats of the lighter colored stencil paste over the top of that black background. So I'm just dabbing and stippling the Simply White paint over the top of the word apothecary first. I'm offloading a lot of my paint onto a paper towel in between, and then I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Antique Gold Lux Metallic. So the apothecary part is dry. I've just shifted the stencil, and now I'm going over the top of the words Old Salem with that Antique Gold Metallic paint. When I was finished with that, I blow dried that section, and then again I am shifting the stencil down. Remember, we want it to expand to make it suit this larger surface, and then I'm going over the top of the little cauldron there with my antique gold. Again, I'm just dabbing it on. I do end up going over the top of this with Arabian gold stencil paste later, which you will see, so you could skip this step technically, but at this stage I thought I was just going to be using this antique gold mineral paint. So once I finished that section, I carefully removed the stencil. I'm also wiping the extra paint from the different areas before I move on to the next section. So I've repositioned the stencil again, and I'm going over the top of the bottom text with that same Simply White because I knew that I wanted to use the lighter metallic stencil paste over the top of that section. So again, this is just going to save me doing lots of different coats of that metallic paste. So I'm just going over the top of that area, and then I'm going to lift that straight up. Again, I am going to blow dry those different sections in between so that I don't get any smudging. I've repositioned the cauldron section, and now I'm using that Simply White over the top of the bubbles and the steam that are coming out of the cauldron. I'm going to be using that lighter metallic stencil paste there, and then I'm switching over to the antique gold so that I can go in and start adding those lovely sparkles in the background. Once I was finished doing that, I then repositioned the stencil, and I'm going to add the year underneath. So again, if you want to make that stencil go a little bit further, you can space it out by maneuvering it a bit different. I then repositioned it again and added a couple more sparkles. I decided I'd go in with a little bit more of that antique gold over the top of the cauldron section, and then when that was dry, I took out Saltwater Pearl stencil paste by Paint Couture. So I'm going over the top of the areas where I have that Simply White chalk paint, and I'm just dragging that stencil paste over the top of the word apothecary This isn't going to be perfect. There's going to be little ridges here and there, but honestly, it doesn't need to be perfect. I tend to embrace the imperfections. I want this to look like a vintage apothecary sign, but to still have that sort of whimsical nature to it. So I'm going to gently remove that. I'm then going to clean that stencil, and then I'm going to reposition it so that I can add it to the bubbles and the steam over the top of the cauldron. Once I'd finished with that section and I'd cleaned that off, I went in and repeated the same process over the top of the text down the bottom. When that was dry, I took out Redesign's Country Blossoms mold. I'm going to be using cornstarch in the first design that I want to use, and I'm going to be using my Das air dry clay in my molds today. So I'm rolling that clay out, and then I'm going to start pushing it into the mold. You can see I'm also using my fingers to push out that excess clay and just continuing along until I have all of the features of that particular design filled with this air dry clay. I'm then going to flex the mold to help it release from the sides, flip it over and roll it back. So I am going to be making 2 of these and positioning them down the bottom. Ultimately, I want to make a wreath to go around the outside of the apothecary sign there. I'm then going to dust this other design with cornstarch, and I'm going to be making 2 of these to begin with, repeating that same process of pushing out that clay, then flexing it, flipping it over and removing it. So I'm going to make 2 of these. They're going to go next to the other castings that we already made. I really love this one because of the variety of greenery and florals that this particular mold has. So I'm just adjusting how that's sitting, and then I'm going to be working my clay into the larger of the designs on that Country Blossoms mold. And then after removing the excess clay and pushing that out, I'm going to flex it, flip it over and release my casting. So I'm going to be making 2 of these. Again, whatever I do on one side, I am trying to repeat on the other, so we have a little bit more of a symmetrical design. So again, here I'm working out placement. I wasn't worried about getting any white clay or things like that on the black paint that was able to be wiped back with a wet wipe. So I'm just casting this smaller little greenery piece here. I ended up casting a couple of these. They were great little fillers. And then there's also another one here that I'm going to be using. These ones I only had 1 of each, and they went down the bottom on the right and left hand sides. So here you can see I've sped it up because I was making multiple castings of that Country Blossoms mold, and again just working out placement. I realized that I was going to want to create another one of those particular castings there that you can see, so I've sort of alternated which castings I was using. And then when I got closer to the top section, I realized I was going to have to cast some smaller pieces, particularly there was a smaller flower that I cast that you'll see shortly. So here I'm going in and adding my Sealy's Quickset wood glue to the back of my still wet clay castings. You definitely want to glue your castings down while soon after you have taken them out of the mold so that you can manipulate them however you want. I'm being gentle. I don't want to damage any of those details. Here you can see I'm coming in with that little single flower that's from the same Country Blossoms mold. So I'm going to have one up the top and one down the bottom. And then I cleaned up any of those areas with a wet wipe. After a couple of hours, I then came in with Paint Couture's Pitch Black, and I'm going to be going over the top of my castings. They've got a little bit of a crust on them. They're not completely dry. I am adding that black paint over the top, being careful not to go over the top of the areas where I have that stencil paste. A water mister was definitely helpful at times during this process. I ended up doing 1 and a bit coats. The second coat was just sort of to get any of the areas that I had missed. I then let these dry overnight, and the next day I came in with Paint Couture's Amazon Lux Metallic. I'm using a small artist brush to go over the top of the stem and leaf details first. It doesn't really matter if I go over the top of any of the florals because I will be layering paint over the top of those. So I'm just working my way across, painting in those stem and leaf details, as I said. So I really love using Paint Couture's Lux Metallics, and especially for Halloween, I think it brings that wonderful whimsical feel to it. They look really beautiful, as you can see, over the top of black. It will really deepen the tone of those. I'm just going over the top of the high points. I'm not going to go down the sides of each of the castings there. I'm happy for that color to just sit on the top. So I'm sort of holding my brush on a bit of an angle as I'm going over the top of all of those details. This is helping me avoid any of those lower points. I'm just going to continue to work my way around, applying the Amazon Lux Metallic. I wanted to bring in a little bit of tonal variation, so I took out Paint Couture's Emerald Lux Metallic, and I'm going over the top of that Amazon. It's almost dry, but I am getting a nice little bit of color mixing happening there. I just, as I said, wanted to vary the tones of greens that we had there. It will just add a bit more interest. Again, it is that lovely metallic, so it's also got that beautiful shine to it. So I'm just going to work my way around, adding that emerald here and there. And then I took out Paint Couture's Royal Silk Lux Metallic. So this is a really deep, beautiful purple. I'm going to be going over the top of all of the flowers, except there are a couple of sections I will leave because I want to bring in a different color to change it up a little bit. But again, I'm just hitting those high points. At this point, I can cover over any areas where I got the Amazon or emerald on those florals. And I'm just going to work my way around, applying that purple to select florals where I want it to go. If I inspire you to try any of the Paint Couture or Redesign products used in this video, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate links. I will put them in the description below. I just get a little thank you in return. Next, I took out Paint Couture's Oyster Pearl Lux Metallic. I'm going to be going over the top of some of the florals that I decided to leave without the royal silk on them. I wanted to just bring in another color to create a little bit of interest, to change it up a little bit. Obviously, if you're going to do this, you can use whatever colors suit your home decor. It really is up to you. So I also decided that I would go in and you'll see me shortly. I'm going to dab at some of the other greenery and florals that are already around, again, just to create a little bit of interest and differentiation. I then took out Paint Couture's Lilac Lux Metallic paint. I'm actually going to go in and layer this over the top of the Royal Silk. The Royal Silk is already dry. I'm going to allow some of it to peek through. I felt like it was just a little bit too dark. I wanted to lighten it up a little bit. Yes, it's a Halloween project, but I definitely wanted to highlight the beauty of those florals. Next, I took out Paint Couture's Bronze Lux Metallic. I'm going to be using a smaller artist brush to dab that in the center of each of the florals, also including the ones that we did in that Oyster Pearl. So this is just going to add a little bit of extra interest, a bit of extra shine, and again, it's just really adding all these colors together. I think it's just a really nice combination. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Arabian Gold Metallic paint. So as I said before, I wasn't 100% happy with how that antique gold was looking. I wanted it to be a bit more 3D. So I've repositioned the stencil over the top of the areas that have the antique gold, like Old Salem first. And I'm using the metallic stencil paste over the top of that with a palette knife. I can use a wet wipe to pull away any areas that I made a mistake. I'm repeating the same process over the top of the cauldron. And as I said before, anywhere that I have that antique gold, I decided I would go in and add this Arabian Gold metallic stencil paste to really make those areas stand out a bit more. So as I said at the beginning, you will find this stencil linked below. I've made it available in my Etsy store, but if you are unable to get that and cut your own stencil, any kind of apothecary stencil would work great. You could use individual letter stencils as well, or stamps. I just really wanted to give you guys the easier option to use what I'm using. And I have also included a wreath around the outside in case you don't have molds that you can use to create this sign. So I'm just moving on now to the year or the date that's down the bottom. And then I'm going to carefully remove that stencil. I also had to reposition it to add in those couple of extra little sparkles that I added down the bottom. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in Satin. I'm going to be applying 2 coats of this over the top of the entire project. Yes, we have those beautiful Lux Metallics, but we're also working with chalk paint there, so that needs to be sealed, and it's also going to give our project a lovely shine. When that dries, I'll later add some of these hanging attachments to the back. And here's a look at our finished apothecary sign. I love how this turned out. I think it has a really lovely whimsical quality to it, but let me know what you think of this in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find a full product list and my affiliate links in the description below. Thanks for watching.